I never tell our staff, do this way. We always explain why we do what we do. So they know the reason behind their actions. And they also understand what they do makes a difference in different ways to the guest, to the property, to the expenses, whatever they may be, right? It gives them a different type of satisfaction. When they're on board in that sense, then it's easier for them to help you out with different areas of the operation. So cross training is definitely very important.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of The Report. Today, we got some sunshine here in San Diego, and we got our Beers and Deals meetup tonight here in the Little Italy neighborhood, and we got a brand new location at the Simone Little Italy building, Sky Lounge on the 35th floor. Super excited for that, but I'm even more excited for this conversation today. I got a special guest who just joined my boutique hotel mastermind. He owns 7 boutique hotels. I got my man, Neil Shah. Neil, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. I'm so happy to be here.
I am super thrilled to have you in the mastermind, but I'm really excited to dig into your story, man. You have such a unique background, but also with the boutique hotel stuff, man. It's a very exciting thing. So for the listeners, why don't you just give us an overview of like what you currently own today in the real estate space?
So we have 2 properties in Tucson. They are branded. So one of them is Country Inn and Suites. The other one is Comfort Suites. And then we have 5 properties in Sedona. 2 branded properties, Ascent Collection and Green Tree Inn. And then we have 3 independent boutique properties.
I love that. What do you think is the biggest difference between the branded properties and the independent in your estimation?
I think freedom. You know, you are free to do pretty much what you want to do with independent properties. And, you know, I come from the thinking of pride of ownership. So we want our properties to be as best as we can make them to be because we want to make sure our guests and our staff both love and enjoy the property. From my point of view, our staff is equally important as guests, if not more, because if the staff is proud of the property, they love the property, then automatically your satisfaction from the guest is going to go up. So yeah, we definitely focus on the quality of the product and making sure our guests and the staff are always taken care of and happy.
You know, it sounds cliche, but you could take that same principle and apply that to any business that especially is in the retail space or hospitality space to where you have customers, whether it's restaurant, hospitality, hotels. It all starts with the staff. I know when I go out to eat or I go out to grab a drink, I'm always looking at the service. And for me, like, I love good service. You could have the best food, the best drinks, the best ambiance, but if the service is not there, I'm probably not going to be going back to that spot very often.
I agree with you 100%. Yeah.
I also feel like with the hotel space right now, there's a huge delta. You know, with multifamily right now, it's very, very hard to find deals. Cap rates are very low, and good luck finding a multifamily deal out there. But, you know, we were talking before we started recording with hotels right now, the deals are out there. A lot easier to find than the multifamily side. It's still challenging in this environment. It's not easy, but you have a much better chance of finding a good deal in the boutique hotel space, and you also have a much better chance of swinging the revenue. You know, we were talking before the show, the Black Sands Inn, that property was doing $20,000 a month. We just hit $80,000 a month in less than a year.
Yeah.
Imagine quadrupling the rents on a multifamily property in 1 year. You can't find a deal.
It's
like
impossible.
That. Yeah. So your story's so unique. You grew up in India. Tell us about like your background growing up. Like, where did you grow up in India?
So I grew up in state of Gujarat in India. I did electrical engineering from India. I moved here when I was 23. Before I moved here, I had a job and I had a business, successful business in India. So some of my family and friends were quite shocked when I decided to leave all that behind and come to US and pretty much start from zero. It was tough for me as well, but I was just, I don't know, excited for the opportunity to go to a new place and learn new things. And
what did your parents do growing up?
So my dad had a small grocery store. And I remember my dad's struggles when I was really young. We had a small apartment that my dad had rented. pretty close to the shop that he was running. He would work at the shop all day. He would come home at whatever 8:30, 9 o'clock, have dinner, relax a little bit, and then he would go and drive rickshaw, like you do taxi, right?
Mm-hmm.
He would go and do that for 3-4 hours,
Mm.
come home at, whatever, 12, 3, 4 o'clock, go to sleep, go back to the shop in the morning. He did that for quite a while to get his life going.
Mm.
And I have seen him grow. We were, middle class family, nothing crazy, but we were happy, we were content. But I have seen him work hard and his work ethics, and I will never forget that.
Did your mom work too?
No, mom was just, housewife, and she took care of us.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
What was the business you had out there?
So I was in electrical engineering. So I was in wind turbine business, and we had started installing high tension electrical lines. At the age of 23, we were 3 partners, 3 friends. When we used to go for meetings to get new business, one time we walk into the meeting, and there were 3 people sitting at the table, and they're like, "Where's your boss?" We're like, "This is it, man. We own the company." So then they're like, "Oh, okay, well, sit down." We start talking. We explain to them how we work, what we do, what the process is. They were quite impressed. They were ready to give us the job, but the deadline of the job was too close, and we were not big enough to have material on hand.
Mm.
So we had to decline that phase of the job, and they said, "Next phase, you guys better be ready, having material all lined up, so you can have the next phase." Unfortunately, I left to come here before the next phase started. So,
And what was the reason you came out here?
my uncle and my aunt, they asked me at one point, like, "You want to come here to study, further studies maybe, and try and see how things are here?" And I was young. I didn't really think too much about it. And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I said yes. They filed papers, and I got my visa. So I came here to study further into electrical engineering. Once I got here, I realized that I had to study for 4 more years. And I was on a student visa. That means I have to pay a lot higher fees. But at the end of the day, the goal was to get into business. So then I was thinking, if I go to college for 4 more years, then get a job for a few more years, then find something I'm really good at, and then maybe start a business. So that seemed like a pretty long-term goal. So I decided maybe I'll find something else. So my uncle had a bunch of friends in different businesses. So he took me to see one of his friends who was involved with hotel businesses. So we go see him, and I started working at one of his hotels in Anaheim. And I had only been here for a month when I started working.
Mm.
So,
Where are you going to school at?
well, I decided not to at that point.
Okay, got it.
So I started working, and I had a little difficult time understanding the language,
I can
learning the
imagine.
language. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? So first couple of months were pretty rough. But you put your mind to it, and you can accomplish anything. So I got the hang of it. While I was started working in the hotel, I actually really liked the business. So I decided to go to college and get a degree in hotel management. So that's how the journey started, man. I used to stay at the hotel in one of the rooms. I had no title because I don't know anything. I would just get up, get ready, go to the office, and just work in every department. I go back to sleep when night audit is done. Because I have nothing to do, nowhere to go. But I learned so much so quickly because I was just focused and I spent so many hours. I was very thankful for having that opportunity to, sometimes you won't have a title, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was happy that I didn't have a title so I can go and work in any department and learn everything I wanted. So that was a great experience.
So from there, how did the whole idea of like, hey, I'm going to start owning hotels come to fruition?
So during the first few years, I worked at the hotel, got a degree. Then we got married. Then I met my wife during that time. We got married, and I realized it will be really difficult to live in California and find a way or save enough money to invest and get into business. So then I started applying for jobs out of state. I got a job in Flagstaff, California at a 54-room Days Inn as a GM. So we decided to move from Anaheim, California to Flagstaff. So while I was in Anaheim working at that hotel, I had learned how to design websites. I designed the website for the property I worked for and a couple of their friends just for fun. When I started working in Flagstaff, the company I worked for, they own 17 hotels. So after a few months of being a GM, I actually got a contract to design the 17 hotels website. That's when I made some money, a little bit of money.
Mm-hmm.
Because your GM salary, you can't really save enough to invest in a business. Eventually, I met my business partner. They were looking for properties, and coincidentally, they find a property in Flagstaff. So my business partner and two of his cousins, they were kind enough to allow me to invest in that deal. So whatever money I had made from the website designing, I put all that money into the first deal that they did. At that time, I have no idea how the deals work.
Mm-hmm.
What to look for, how to get financing. I was just happy to invest. I was like, here's the check. And I knew the operations.
Right.
So I would go in and help with the operations. So that was my first investment. That's how it started.
And so your partner or partners with this first deal, they let you get into it. They were bringing you on because they saw the value that you brought to the table in the form of operations. Is that right? What was that deal?
So that deal was a Best Western in Flagstaff. I think we bought it for 1.8. If I remember correctly, I think it was doing 600 a year. I think about 3 years down the road, we did some improvements. We were doing about 950 to million maybe. And I realized that Best Western as a brand is starting to change the standards for the properties.
How so?
Just they wanted nicer properties. They want bigger vanities, upgraded bathrooms. And I realized that this property structurally does not have some of the things the brand is going to be requiring. So I suggested to my partners that I think we should try to sell this property and get out of it because we might lose the brand when they really focus on making sure the properties are compliant. So we finally decided to sell the property. I think we sold it after 4 years. I want to say about for 2.7.
Okay, so you bought it for 1.7, sold for 2.7.
Yeah. So I'm not again, I have no idea how these things work. I'm just operations guy. But by the time we sold that property, we had another property in Tucson. So that was an interesting story, by the way. So now I have some confidence, running and making. I feel confident, like yes, I can do this. I can make a difference. I can improve the business.
Mm-hmm.
So when the Tucson property came along, I have no money because the money I had, I already put it into this property, and there wasn't a much cash flow because we were doing property improvements. Right. So I borrowed more money than I had my own on credit cards. My cousin gave me some money. My partner helped me out a little bit, but it was nerve-wracking, man. I borrowed so much money on the credit cards, but I knew this deal was going to work because I had done all the research. And I was confident that this is going to work out.
This is the deal in Tucson.
Yep.
What made you so confident that you wanted to go all in on it?
If you are a busy professional and don't have time to invest in real estate but still want to participate in the passive income and tax benefits, my team, Summers Capital, is buying a lot of boutique hotels right now. We source the deals, we renovate the properties, and we even do all the day-to-day management, making it truly hands-off for our investors. If you want to learn more to see if we can help you, go to summerscapital.com/invest to book a call with our team. Again, that's summerscapital.com/invest. Now back to the show.
I think the location was great. It was about a mile from U of A on Speedway, which is close to downtown. Property had good features, some suites, nice pool area. It has a restaurant and bar, which I'm not a big fan of. The goal was to lease it out and focus on the hotel side. But I also noticed that it was mismanaged. Revenues could be a lot higher. It's not marketed properly. It's not managed right. Expenses are high in some areas. So yeah, man, I was very excited. And then we moved to Tucson. We lived on property for the first 5 years.
Wow.
Me, my wife, and my first daughter. Yeah, man. worked my ass off day and night. Learned a lot, made a big difference. The revenues doubled in 3 years. And then, great cash flow. We all made great returns.
I love that you said a couple things. You said that you started out with the operations and you mastered the operations, but you had no idea how to invest.
Yeah.
You didn't know how to put the deals together. You didn't know how the capital stack worked out. You didn't know how to secure lending, but you knew the operations very well. And a lot of folks, I think, when they get into the investing, they try to learn all the investing, but then they don't learn the operations. And so it's two different perspectives. It's two different angles. But I will say a lot of the really good operators and investors that I know, they started off mastering the operations.
Yeah.
And I know on the multifamily side, I didn't master the operations, but I feel like what we're building here with the short-term rental and the boutique hotel management arm that we have, I feel like we are kind of mastering the operations, especially, Lauren on my team and Jennifer and, Andrea and the girls, they're killing it, right? They're really dialing in. And so now I'm starting to see from that second perspective that you're alluding to, what it's like to become an investor from the ground up operation wise first. And it's two completely different perspectives, but I will say this, and let me know if you agree. When you master the operations and then you also have ownership, you're fully integrated vertically, but it also gives you full control. Would you agree with that?
100%. Yeah. Because you can figure out financing with or without help, right? But if you have not mastered the operations, you can't turn around a property or you can't be successful in operations. So I think that's a crucial part. They're both equally important, right? But having the knowledge of operation is, I think, crucial to the success of the deal.
I couldn't agree more. And so I love that you came from that background. So this hotel in Tucson, living there with your wife, your first daughter, 5 years.
Yep.
What did you learn during those 5 years?
So much, man. And then you know what? Best Western as a brand, I love the brand, and I had opportunity to be on their different advisory committees. And I learned so much through the brand, because when you're involved in certain advisory committees, you get to listen to things that are happening in the industry almost on the first, like on the early stages. So they share a lot of information with you. They want to make the right decision for the brand, right? And we are playing a role in, in a sense, advising, but learning at the same time, right? So that exposure was amazing for me. And the leadership for the brand was phenomenal. But at the same time, on the property level, I really focused on how to make the operation more efficient and automated. The goal has been to have multiple properties. So this was an opportunity for me to try different things and figure out, how do I set up processes where things just happen automatically. I can just check certain KPIs or certain measures and make sure things are happening the right time, the right way. So how do I then duplicate this process when I buy next property and the next property? So that was the biggest learning thing. And I figured out a lot of, how to market the property. In those days, SEO and the website, and, maximizing revenues from OTAs, right? Brand contribution. So all the different aspects of business. That was really great learning process for me.
Yeah, I love that. So what are a couple techniques that you like to implement in terms of maybe reducing the expenses and operating a little bit leaner?
I think cross-training staff is very important. But in order for the staff to understand why we do what we do, I never tell our staff, do this way. We always explain why we do what we do. So they know the reason behind their actions. And they also understand what they do makes a difference in different ways, to the guest, to the property, to the expenses, whatever they may be, right? It gives them a different type of satisfaction. When they're on board in that sense, then it's easier for them to help you out with different areas of the operation, right? So cross-training is definitely very important. just overall, just make the supplies, payroll, right? Those
Mhm.
are the areas that you can make a bigger impact if you watch them closely, right? So those are the things. Besides that, just operational efficiencies, right? What you're buying, where you're buying from, have certain. So the other thing is building outside team. You have a different set of vendors you work with.
Mhm.
In order for you to be successful in getting things done at a right price, right, but quickly, you have to build relationship with certain vendors in your area. When you do that, when something breaks down, especially in our business, things always break down on Friday, right? Weekends
Yeah.
busy, things break down on Friday. But if you have connections, you can make a phone call. Somebody's going to show up, take care of it. Guests are happy. You can sell the room, and does not affect your revenue. So those are some of the things I learned during those times.
When you say cross-train staff, like give me an example. It'd be like if someone is on like more of like the supply or administrative side, you're going to cross-train them to do, for example, what, like marketing and pricing?
So front desk staff, for example, right?
Okay.
They could help us inspect rooms.
Hmm.
They could help me with some of the admin tasks, right? Responding to guest reviews. Nowadays, maybe doing some social media posts if you train them properly, right? So there are just admin tasks, right? So what it does is it frees you up or your AGM to do more important things. We have to realize sometimes when you are a GM, if you are always trying to catch up to the tasks you have to do, you're always working in the business. You have to work on the business.
Yep.
In order to do that, you have to get to the level where you really sit down and say, well, I'm caught up with everything. Now I have time to work on the business. In order to get to that level, you need some support. Because one man cannot do everything. One person
Mhm.
cannot do everything. So if you have great team members who respects you, who you train them properly, they can take on some of your burdens, right? And then things get done the way you want it done on time. So then now you can focus on more important things that can improve the business.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, man. Like, sometimes we get so busy with all these daily tasks that you might feel busy,
Yep.
but you're not moving the needle. You're just kind of playing catch up. And I feel like the key is, like you alluded to, is like you got to figure out a way to spend and allocate X amount of hours per day,
Yep.
X amount of hours per week, growing your business
Yep.
and working on the business, not in the business. And one of the best ways to do that is to obviously create good systems and processes and have an amazing team to where it allows you to kind of step out and focus on growing the business. One of my biggest pet peeves is like sometimes I come in and I always go into each week, I'm like, these are like the 3 things I need to get done this week and nothing
Yep.
else matters. And sometimes it might take 2 months to get those 3 things done, right? It
Yep.
might be a longer project. But my biggest pet peeve is coming in where I'm like, man, I just had the busiest week and I didn't have a chance to really work on those 3 things,
Yep.
And I think it happens to all of us.
Well, the GM, you walk into the office thinking I'm going to get this things taken care of today. You walk in and guess what? People are waiting for you with their issues or whatever's going on.
Mhm.
Suddenly, you have to address those things because those are urgent things, right? So yeah, it is a challenge, but you have to be true to being proactive, right? Because if you constantly let things become urgent and important, you're not being proactive because you are being reactive. You are fixing things when they're breaking, right? If you're being proactive and you have processes in place, you prevent a lot of those things. So the operation runs a lot smoother instead of just chaotic.
Mhm. I agree. Regarding the franchise model, what's a typical franchise fee look like in terms of gross revenue?
It can vary from 8 to 15%. Yeah.
What about to get out of these agreements? Like how many years are these agreements typically?
Depending on the deal, they could be 10 to 20 year term, but you have a window,
Okay.
exit window at every 5 years. But you can negotiate some of those things.
So we had 10 to 20-year term, but every 5 years you have the option to opt out if you want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And is there can you opt out at any time if you want to just pay a fee to cancel?
You can, but then you have to pay a pretty large liquidated damage fee.
What would be a typical fee you think to like get out of a long-term agreement? for like one of your properties, let's say?
Well, pretty huge. It depends on what terms left, but it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars.
But like, let's say, and I've thought about this because, with our model, we are self-operators. And so like, obviously we're not going to be able to operate remotely with, buying a flag, right?
Yeah.
Or franchise under the franchise model. And so I just thought, well, what if we, for the most part, when I see a flagged hotel on the market, we typically don't do a deep dive into it. But I've always wondered, I wonder if there's opportunity to just pay the franchise fee, get out of there. And if there's that much more value add, even though it might cost $100,000, $200,000 to cancel, but if we're going to make $2 million of appreciation by turning around this property, then maybe it makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you do that at the time of purchase. That's the time you can have seller participate in that as well, right? So that can be worked out. That's, I think, best time to do it. But a lot of times the cost of LDs are so high, seller will not help you because like, why would I pay? And as a buyer, the numbers won't make sense. So sometimes you walk away from the deal because you don't want that brand because of whatever reason that may be. You just walk away. It just doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give another example of one of the properties we have. So when we bought our first property in Sedona,
Mm-hmm.
it's called the Arroyo Pinon Ascent Collection Member by Choice Hotels. So when I was negotiating with the seller and then trying to negotiate with the brand, so there are two things. They give you area of protection. So that means that they won't put any other same brand in that radius. And second thing is your fee structure, right? And your exit. Choice has so many different brands. So they were giving me, so the previous owner had a 5-mile radius. They were giving me 3-mile radius. And I was getting upset. I was like, why? Why are you changing the protection for me? But then I realized, why am I so worried about the protection area when they could put any of their other brands right next door to me and I can't stop them?
Right.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a Zen Collection. It could be Quality Inn. It could be Comfort, right? Right next door, I can stop them. So then I said, instead of trying to fight for the protection area, I will negotiate the LD. So I said, instead of my LD being your normal terms, how about my LD being $50,000 flat, anytime? They agreed.
They agreed. Wow.
So I was like, all right, I'll take 3 miles and 50,000, walk away.
That's
So
not bad.
so now anytime if I want to cancel and go independent, I'm gonna check for 50K, I'm out.
Hey guys, real quick, the only way this podcast grows is if you guys share it and review the show. So if you do find value, if you could take 2 seconds and drop a 5-star on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, it would mean the world to me. But more importantly, it will help us reach new audiences and help more people build wealth through real estate investing.
How many of your 7 properties have pools and jacuzzis?
5.
Okay. Because I've seen other hotels, like the Lafayette Hotel I just went to this past weekend with Anthony, Alex, Lauren, Jennifer was there. But we went over there and they basically just renovated this hotel. It's like 104 units here in North Park, San Diego. And it's an old historic, basically, hotel that was like run down.
Yeah.
They put a lot of money into this renovation. They did a really good job. Redid the whole pool, the bar area, restaurant. It's a whole vibe now.
Yeah.
And the ownership group, Custodian Holdings, I believe is the name. They own a lot of these really nice, trendy restaurants here in San Diego. And they did a great job of just making this whole thing a vibe. Like, it's the trendy hot spot to be. It was completely packed on a Saturday afternoon. And I would say the majority of the people there were not staying at the hotel.
Yeah.
But they rent out like day passes to use their pool, and they really did a good job of just kind of making it like a cool hot spot to hang out. And I was like, man, I would love to do a project like that one day.
Yeah.
You know.
So we did the same thing. We are going to be on Resort Pass, which is what will allow anybody to book a cabana, non-guests even.
I like that.
Yeah, or a day pass for the pool area. So we just actually got on that last weekend.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
There's another hotel here in downtown San Diego, and they got a rooftop. And this was actually a brand new construction. It just opened, like, I want to say 6 months ago. But they got a rooftop, and it's pool, bars. They got cabanas, and it's got a nice little view. And it's not that many units. I want to say it's like an 80 unit hotel. They did a really good job of it, and I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but it's like a unique name.
Yeah.
And it's actually one of the big hotel groups that owns it. So I thought it was kind of unique that they didn't put their branding on it. They just made it like this one-off like name.
Yep.
I feel like, you know, especially spots like down here in this part of San Diego, people don't like the big brand names anymore.
And I think people like different experiences now more than they did before.
Mm-hmm. It's the new generation.
Yeah, so they don't have to stay at a branded property. You know, they don't always want to stay at a branded property, and also the purpose of the trip also determines where they stay. If they're going with a family, right, they want to stay at a nice resort by the beach, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter if it's branded or not, right? So I think experiential economy has become quite strong in the last few years.
Yeah.
People would pay more for experiences.
I agree. There's a really good book called Big Shifts Ahead.
Yeah.
I forget the author's name, but I interviewed him on my old apartment investing podcast years ago. But he studies all the demographics and he breaks them down by decade. And so he labels them all by like nicknames. And so like if you were born in the 40s, he calls them the savers because those folks watched their parents, you know, grow up in the Great Depression.
Yeah.
And so they're like, if you look at the people that were born in the 40s, my parents included, they're very tight with their money, right? And he labels people born in like the 80s and the 90s, millennials, the sharers. They want to go and have all these experiences and they want to share it with all their friends.
Yeah.
And if you look at a lot of the big name restaurants, the Applebee's, the Yard Houses, the BJ's, like a lot of these restaurants that were very popular like back in the day, they're kind of phasing out right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of these different, at least our generation, they prefer the experience.
Yep.
And so you're seeing a lot of these nice restaurants here in the Little Italy neighborhood, which is like, you know, 30, 40 of the trendiest restaurants in San Diego. You don't see any of those big brand restaurants here. You don't see the chains.
Yep.
And if a restaurant does really well, the ownership will open up a second restaurant, but it will be a completely different branding, completely different name. And so as a guest, you have no idea. You know, and
that's
so there's something to be said about that.
It's smart though, right?
It is smart.
You cater to different guests, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have the same name, same food, same menu at a different location, you are basically cutting into your own pie, right? If you have a different experience, different menu, right, close by, two different type of guests are going to, you know, catering to two different type of guests. So that's smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, for the listeners out there, Big Shifts Ahead, recommend reading that book. It's a good book regarding the demographics just shifts. There's a lot of shifting going on right now, and you know, a lot of these trends that we're seeing in the hospitality space, all kind of trickle down from these demographics. You know, things are moving quick these days.
Things are, man. Yeah.
I mean, if you look at technology, and the way that, you know, the speed at which a lot of things are done in our generation now, our parents or grandparents, like when they grew up, they didn't have access to any of this stuff. And things are moving quickly. So back to the hotel. So two of them are independent. Which one would you say you prefer? Are you trying to buy more independent stuff right now, or you want to buy more franchise stuff?
I prefer more independent or soft brands. I realized that in 2014, 15, there are more opportunities for repositioning the property when you buy independent properties versus buying a branded properties. Branded properties have support from the brand, right? So they tend to do generally okay because they're not entirely dependent on the owner and their experience, right? The brand plays their role in supporting the business. And at the same time, when you buy independent properties, you can reposition them. You can put a soft brand. You still have a lot of freedom, but you can renovate the property, rebrand it if you have to, and increase the revenues. And of course, because of that, the values go up to the roof, right? I would be more interested in independent or soft brands than branded properties.
As we look forward over the next 12 to 24 months, where do you see the biggest opportunities in the hotel space?
I'm hoping to find some good deals in next 6 to 8 months.
And you're working on a deal right now.
Yep, we are always working on something.
Tell us a little bit about that deal.
So this property is also in Arizona. I am not able to disclose because of NDA. But it's less than 50 rooms. I am trying to convince seller to do seller financing because the property has pretty weak financials. And given the current climate, it's extremely difficult to get financing for such property. So we'll try, but if the financing doesn't come through, then we'll try to explore seller financing. But this is another great opportunity to buy a property, rebrand it, renovate it, reposition it, and I'm quite confident I can increase the revenue substantially in this one as well.
Yeah. And how many other properties do you have in this market?
We have 7.
All in this one market?
In the state.
Generally speaking. Okay.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
And so will you be able to reduce payroll expenses and payroll ratio because you can leverage payroll in a staff from your other properties?
Yeah, of course. There are properties close by, so we can, again, share the staff between the properties. We'll also use some technologies where it will allow us to control our payroll a little better. So that definitely is an option. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it kind of makes sense to have few properties close by. It's easier to manage versus, every property so far away from each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. So from a debt standpoint with this particular deal, you're saying because the existing in-place revenue and cash flow is so low, you're not going to be able to meet the DSCR requirement to get in-place debt. So you're looking at either maybe like private money financing or seller financing.
Yeah. Or we'll have to put down more money.
Or put down more money to meet the DSCR requirement.
Yeah.
But often that kills the deal.
Yeah, because then I want to do some improvements too, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm coming up with 50% down instead of 30% down, right?
Yeah.
And on top of that, I got to do renovation, right? So that definitely changes the whole deal. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when you're doubling your money in, you're basically slashing your return by 50%.
Yeah.
So
I think right now, people with a lot of cash can probably have a lot more leverage to negotiate the deals because you could actually put more money down. Even with higher interest rates, you can justify the debt payments. And down the road, you can always refinance.
Yeah, I feel like as long as you don't have, a crazy prepayment penalty.
Yeah.
It's, you can refi when these rates go down.
That's the thing. 4 years at least, you got to hold.
Where do you think rates are? When do you think rates are going to go down?
That's a great question. I don't have a crystal ball, but I am thinking maybe sometime next year, mid next year, rates probably will start adjusting down a little bit.
We're all speculating, but where do you think they'll level off?
If I was to guess, around 5 maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the lowest interest rate you'd ever secured on like a hotel loan?
So I have 4% fixed for 10 years for 3 of my properties. And I have...
wow, that's great.
It's amazing, dude. I'm so thankful I did that just a couple of years ago, actually. And I have one property where I have a pretty big SBA at 3.75 for 25 years.
Wow. Fixed.
What's
the highest LTV that you've ever gotten on a hotel loan?
Honestly speaking, we are more mindful about the debt payment relating to the cash flow. So even though the bank might be okay us putting less down, we in most cases go in and put down at least 25-30% to reduce the risk, I guess, in a sense, right? So yeah, I don't really care about. There were days of 15%, down payment, right? Mm-hmm. The first property we bought in Flagstaff, my very first investment, that was 15% down.
Wow, what kind of lender was that?
I don't even remember, man.
But it wasn't SBA or anything.
It was no SBA. It was conventional. Yeah. Pretty awesome.
I hear that it's easier to get financing for these flagged and branded hotels, generally speaking. Is that right?
It is definitely true.
a little bit less risk from the lender's perspective in terms of like operations and all that.
Sometimes they might actually require you, if you want the financing, like you put a flag, we'll finance. No flag, either no financing or you got to put 35% down. So those are some of the challenges of buying independent properties.
If you have an independent property, can you, generally speaking, as long as it's kept up in good condition and it shows well, can you convert it over to a branded property like pretty relatively easily?
Of course, yeah.
There's a lot of brands that would take it on.
So you got to marry the property with the right brand in the right market. Right?
And how do you know which one is the right brand?
Yeah, so if you are in a, like say, a market like here, right, San Diego, you have a really nice boutique property, and you want to put a brand, you would not want to put an economy brand because it will not do justice to your property. You can't pull the rates because those brands only command, $50, $70, $80, $100 rates. You want to be at $150, $200 maybe, right? So the right brand definitely matters. The other issue with putting a brand on independent is there are very few brands out there who, if the property is in a really good shape, would give you a flag without or with very minimal expense, minimal PIP. But most brands will still make you spend a lot of money. So putting a brand or changing a flag are expensive propositions. They are not cheap. Signage, right?
Yeah.
The guest amenities with logos. You got to pay application fee, right?
Yeah, and then I was thinking like something that's maybe counterintuitive to like what you were alluding to with the lending for a branded property. It's like, yes, it's less risk, but it's also more expenses that are coming out, and it's taken away from your NOI.
Yep.
Yes, maybe you bring in more revenue to make up for it, but you could argue your expense ratio is going to go up.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking up to 15% in fees.
Oh, right off the bat. Yep.
That's crazy, man.
So the other thing I'm starting to not like is when you have a branded property, right? In some markets, no matter what brand you have, you are going to get a lot of OTA bookings, right? You just don't have a choice. That's just how the markets work. If you're a branded property, you are paying, let's say, 8% franchise fee, right? Your OTAs are charging you on average 15, 18%. So you got to pay the OTAs, whatever, 15 or 18%. But on that revenue, you got to also pay the franchise fee. For the business, they didn't really generate, right? It's not the brand.com that brought the business. So that kind of sucks, right? Because you are almost, it's like double dipping. You are paying two people for the same, for one source of revenue. So for that reason, I am becoming a bigger fan of independent properties.
So if a booking comes through, let's just say you have a Days Inn, and the booking comes through Days Inn, you pay them the OTA fee in addition to the franchise?
The other way around. So if the reservation comes from booking.com.
Okay.
So you're paying booking.com the commission, but you're also paying the franchise fee on the revenue.
Got it.
So yeah. It's
a double tax.
It's kind of,
Interesting. And they're not going to let you operate how you want to operate.
Nope.
I know with us being remote management and having our own management company, it's like, well, we're probably never going to be able to go branded, but I'm okay with that for the reasons that you alluded to. In terms of supply with hotels, what are you seeing on that side?
I think it depends on the market, but I think the construction pipeline has slowed down. A lot of rooms have already been added in some of the markets. I don't follow a lot of markets, but Arizona-wise, Phoenix, Flagstaff, a lot of rooms have been added into those markets in the last 3 to 5 years. But at the same time, a lot of hotels have been bought and converted into apartments. That has been a trend last few years. So that actually has helped with the supply situation, new rooms being added to the market. But real estate is, you can't look at a city itself or a state itself. It's so individualized. It's such a local market. Even for Phoenix, this Chandler area hotels, right? That's a different market than Glendale or Phoenix or Mesa.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just look at one whole big area and say this is going to be same everywhere, right? So it depends on the individual area, but that's what I noticed.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's a lot of asset classes. I think like the real estate in general, like from the lending side, it's more national.
Yeah.
But in terms of, the real estate market and the fundamentals, supply and demand, it's so hyper local. It's so micro.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. I mean, because when they build new hotels, generally speaking, it's probably like Class A, right?
Yep.
More higher end, because it just makes more sense if you're going to, with the cost of construction being so
Why
expensive.
would you build? Yeah, exactly.
Why would you build something that's going to bring in half the revenue of
Yeah,
something nice, right? The hotels that are being converted to multifamily, those are typically economy hotels that are run down. They've kind of reached the end of their life cycle, and they need to either be repurposed, redeveloped, renovated into a nicer hotel, or completely transition over to multifamily, and that's taken supply off of the market there.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to kind of see how that shakes out. But man, I think like coming from the multifamily side, I feel like the hospitality, man, it's so much more exciting. It allows your creative side of your mind to come out. And there's just so many more levers that you can push and pull to really drive the revenue and really like boost that NOI, whether it's on the design element, the rebrand, the pricing strategy, your marketing, your operations, the communication, customer service, driving direct bookings, like social media. There's so many different ways, marketing on Airbnb, on Vrbo, to where you can really drive revenue. And, on the multifamily side, it's kind of a boring business looking at it. But I do love multifamily. I think like from a risk adjusted return basis, it's a very, very safe asset class. Hotel definitely is a little bit more risk, but hence the higher cap rates. But I have so much more fun in the hospitality side, man.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
The one thing I have realized in the last few years is the technology is allowing the small, independent boutique properties to be more successful than they have ever been. Because we are now able to do what big brands have been able to do for so many years because of technology. You can do social media marketing. You have easier way to communicate with the guests nowadays, right? You can collect email addresses. You can build your own database over the time, right? And if you have tools that are easy and economical to utilize to generate more direct bookings, you can hire a company to do SEO for you, Google Ads, right? I'm so excited to see what's coming next, right? It is great to see that these little properties can be successful versus before they had to struggle. They didn't have these tools before. So they just sat and waited for phone calls for people to walk in. Now they can do all these things and be successful business.
It's almost like the little guys can win now, especially in the boutique hotel space.
Yeah.
Where if you look at a lot of different asset classes out there, it's hard to compete with the hedge funds and the private money. But in the hotel space, I feel like, for us, we're going after deals between 2 and 10 million. It's too big for some of the more independent operators or individual investors, but it's way too small for the hedge funds, the institutional money. And so I kind of feel like you alluded to, with all the marketing and the technology that we have to our disposal now, we can go in and buy that $2 to $10 million property. We can renovate it, we can operate it, and we can win. Which I love. Dude, it's been great having you on the in the meetup. I'm sorry, the mastermind. It's nice to have your perspective in there with all your years of experience in ownership. And I know the rest of the group is, super excited to have you in there as well, man.
I'm so excited to join the group, man. People are great. The whole group is amazing. And you know what I like about the group? They are so focused. They want to get shit done. And I love that. Because a lot of times in real estate, we just look at deals after deals after deals, and we don't pull the trigger. Right?
Yeah.
We got to take action. And it looks like I'm still pretty new, but what I'm seeing, they are gung-ho, man. They are going for it. I think they're going to be very successful. Some of the guys, they are really, really focused.
Yeah, we got some gamers in there, man.
Yeah.
And I can tell. Well, it's cool. It's cool to see them all grow, first of all. But I mean, we got some gamers in there that are they're not messing around.
Yeah.
They're partnering. There's partnership opportunities within the group, but it's cool to really see them go after these hotels. And one thing for me, man, I didn't realize until we started this mastermind is like I didn't realize how much I actually enjoy having the community and helping. And, you know, sometimes when you teach, it makes you better as well.
Yeah,
You know,
100%.
but dude, I appreciate you coming on the show, man. It's been an honor and a pleasure to, you know, have you in the mastermind, but also interview you in person. I know you're going to be at the meetup tonight.
Yep.
Super excited for it. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Listeners, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.